suddenly terrifying. I turned to Granny Betty, who sat quietly at the end of the long sofa. An amused smile flickered across her face, but she remained silent. "Go on," said Mum. "This is what you've been waiting for." Grandpa glared at us. "Stand behind your father if you're scared," he bellowed. Lulu, Damien and I reluctantly slid off the sofa and squatted behind Dad, who leaned forward and began to pivot the chair slowly sideways. Holding our breath, poised to flee, we peered under the rising base. A black creature, a little smaller than my hand, crouched statue-like on the concrete floor. At one end were pincers, evil-looking but tiny compared with the fat, hairy tail, sharply pointed at the tip, which curled up and forward over the wide body. Perfect regular seams joined shiny black segments of the tail, body, and pincers, making it seem more like an exquisitely made machine than a real animal. Dad whistled. "Black, hairy, thick-tailed scorpion," he said. "If you can't see a snake on your first day, this is as good as it gets." "Could easily kill one of you chaps," added Grandpa. But the scorpion didn't seem to be in the mood for killing anyone. It took off with ungraceful speed, scuttling towards the wall where it disappeared under a bookcase. Dad offered to try and catch it, but Grandpa said there were so many in the house already that Dad should just leave the little bugger where he is. Botswana is more than 2/3 desert. Selebi is in the other third, which gets just enough rain to miss out on the glamorous distinction of desert, and much too little to settle the ubiquitous red dust or support any but the hardiest of plants. Except for a few months of the year, that is, when the occasional storm cloud bursts and fat raindrops puff dust into the air and pummel sheets of water that flood the baked ground. In a good rainy season, the dry riverbeds that thread their way east to the Limpopo River might flow. Often they don't. For 9 months of the year, it is hot. For the rest, it is dry. There's no time of year when it is not hot or dry. 150 kilometers from Selebi, the borders of Botswana, South Africa, and Zimbabwe meet at the country's easternmost tip. Here, the Limpopo peels away from Botswana and heads toward the Indian Ocean. Botswana is securely landlocked. At any point in the country, you're at least 400 kilometers from the sea. But making up for the absence of sea and lakes, spilling hundreds of kilometers across the dry sands in the north, lies the world's largest inland delta. The bush surrounding the exquisite Okavango Delta, the jewel of the Kalahari, teems with all of Africa's biggest and most impressive wildlife. The bush around Selebi teems with cows, goats, and donkeys. There are few fences, and the animals wander mostly unimpeded across the flat land. The land is overgrazed, and any lions, elephants, and rhinos that weren't hunted down left long ago in search of places with more food and fewer people. Only the small, dangerous animals, like snakes and scorpions, which don't mind living alongside humans, are left. For by Botswana standards, a country the size of France with fewer than 2 million people, the region is populous. Cattle posts of 5 to 20 huts are sprinkled across the bush, and there are several bigger villages, the largest of which have electricity and running water. Selebi, which appears on maps as Selebi Piqui, consists of just 3 old houses and several concrete slabs that were once houses. A relic from the early years of the nearby copper and nickel mine, Selebi is the ghost part of town. By the late 1980s, when my parents abruptly decided to return to Botswana, ending a peripatetic decade that had spanned South Africa, England, and New Zealand and produced 3 children, Grandpa Iva and Granny Betty had long been Selebi's sole residents. Piqui, which lies 10 kilometers away, is the real town, home when we arrived to around 40,000 people, most of whom directly or indirectly derived their livings from the mine. Among them were Grandpa Terry and Granny Joan, Mum's parents, who, like most Piqui residents, visited the old town only in passing, travelling to or from the Little Bush Airport. The airport had a tall glass control tower, 2 faded orange windsocks, and a small customs and immigration building. It was here that my brother, sister, and I first set foot in Botswana.